Alright, so here we go with a 5 land hand. Yeah. I mean, I think since we're on the draw and the spell snare is really good on the draw, we can keep and sort of hope to draw out of this situation. It looks like our opponent's getting started with the Birds of Paradise here. So we're just going to go ahead and play a blue fetch land, and we can crack it if we want to. And we'll see exactly what we're up against here. Could be Abzan Company, could be something else. And there's a Birds of Paradise. And we'll see what the follow-up is, if there is one. Nope, no follow-up. Okay. So let's just go ahead and crack the Flooded Strand here. And we're gonna just set up shop here. We have access to Mana Leak, and then we're gonna set up Anger of the Gods. So that's basically the primary game plan here. And we'll see what our opponent's up to. We see 2 copies of Birds of Paradise so far. And what's it gonna be here? Okay, it's gonna be a Siege Rhino, so it could be sort of more of an Abzan mid-range style deck that we're up against. And we're just going to go ahead and fetch for an island here and Mana Leak the Siege Rhino. And it's interesting because we may actually not even feel the need to play this Anger of the Gods right now. Especially since we drew this Remand. We can just hold up Remand. The Birds of Paradise aren't actually pressuring us. So, since our opponent already has 3 lands, getting rid of both birds doesn't necessarily seem like a huge deal. But now that our opponent's going for Wiltleaf Liege, the birds would become bigger threats. But let's just go ahead and remand this Wiltleaf Liege. And we now know a little bit more about what's in our opponent's hand, and we can set up with Snapcaster Mage for next turn if we want to. And yeah, let's just go ahead and get a Sacred Foundry here. And we're just kind of using our fetch lands early. And so that's just to help thin our deck, thin lands out of our deck. So we could play Pia and Kieran here, but I don't really like playing Pia since we have Anger in our hand. And this turn we probably just want to go ahead and Snapcaster Mage to try to counter this Wiltleaf Liege. So we'll see exactly what's going on here. So since our opponent only has 2 mana up, we actually have the opportunity to Snapcaster Mage and then Mana Leak the Wiltleaf Liege to permanently deal with it for now. So let's do that. And we may just not even feel the need to Anger the Gods at all. We may just want to go ahead and jam the PN Kieran, depending on what our opponent commits to the board. And it looks like that may have been a little bit of a misplay since they just played their Windswept Heath after casting this Wiltleaf Liege. But we're just going to go ahead and start the beatdown process with Snapcaster Mage. And yeah, I think we just want to go ahead and commit this PN Kieran to the board. So let's do that. And the 1/1 flyers, if these birds do become 1/2s, like say our opponent has another copy of Wiltleaf Liege, then having flying blockers is definitely relevant. And here is a Voice of Resurgence. Okay. I think we can afford to let that one resolve. We could have spell snared it, but and we maybe should have spell snared it, but we can probably set up some sort of situation involving sacrificing Thopter tokens, and I think we're okay here. So our opponent has a reasonable board. I think we just want to go ahead and pass. What we don't really want to let our opponent generate tokens off the voice, but okay, so here is actually Voice of Resurgence, or Wilt-Leaf Liege number 2, rather. So that's definitely something we have to be thinking about in terms of a problem card. We could Snapcaster Mage and remand it. But let's think about how we want to proceed here. That would give our opponent an elemental token with the voice. So yeah, this is the point where we're kind of regretting not using the spell snare, but if we let this Wilt-Leaf Liege resolve, then the voice becomes a 6/6 and the Liege becomes a 6/6. We'll let it resolve and we'll see how things play out from here. And it looks like a pretty significant attack this turn. So we're just going to go ahead and make some chump blocks. So we'll put the Snapcaster Mage on a voice, and we'll just take the rest. And so we can likely set up a turn involving Anger of the Gods next turn, so we're just going to pass, and we'll see how this plays out. Okay, our opponent's electing to Path to Exile P and Kieran, so we're just going to let that happen. And so this is one of the times where you're like, okay, we let the Voice of Resurgence resolve. It probably wasn't the best case scenario, but now how do we want to proceed? And there's we definitely have options here. So we have Snapcaster Mage in hand. We can use that if we want to here. We can also animate our Celestial Colonnade. But let's go ahead and start by firing off a Electrolyze here. So we're going to Electrolyze a Wilt-Leaf Liege. Our opponent's going to get an Elemental, but hopefully we'll be able to sweep everything up. And we actually drew Lightning Helix, which is a pretty good draw. So what we're going to do here is we're just going to go ahead and make some chump blocks, and we're going to Lightning Helix the Liege that already has 2 damage on it. And so we're going to be able to get rid of one of the Wilt-Leaf Lieges. And so our opponent does have some 8/8 elementals, but we'll see in a second how we can likely sweep away everything this turn. We're going to go ahead and cast an Anger of the Gods to start off. And then we're just going to go ahead and Snapcaster Mage back the Anger of the Gods. So we probably made life a little bit more difficult on ourselves than we needed to, but our opponent had triple Wiltly Fleege, so that put us in a little bit of a tough spot. We still have that Spell Snare from earlier, though, and we now have just drawn Mana Leak, and we can just use this Celestial Colonnade to start the beatdown process. And it looks like our opponent may have run out of gas, for the moment at least. Birds isn't really that threatening at this stage of the game. And yeah, I think we navigated that hairy situation. Once the two Wiltly Fleeges were down, things were not looking that great. Because we would have been able to deal with those cards more easily if we had maybe countered the Voice of Resurgence earlier, but looks like our opponent has drawn a Lingering Souls, so the game is definitely not over. If our opponent does go for the flashback of Lingering Souls, we can definitely counter it with the Mana Leak we have. And so yeah, we're just going to use the Mana Leak. And so we're at 5, our opponent's at 11. I think we're ahead in the game, but not overwhelmingly so. And we're not drawing what we really want to draw, so I think we just want to go ahead and pass the turn here. If we attack for 4, our opponent's likely to just take it. And a Siege Rhino or something off the top would kill us. So this is a bit of a weird attack. Our opponent's just attacking for 1. We're going to go ahead and hope that our opponent didn't draw removal for our Celestial Colonnade. So yeah, I wonder why our opponent attacked here. Maybe we'll see in a minute. Alright, so we're finally going to get to use our Spell Snare. And it's still pretty relevant to get rid of this Voice of Resurgence, so. Now I think we want to go ahead and take this opportunity to get in there. And it looks like our opponent just missed that block that we had with our Celestial Colonnade. And it looks like Chump Block mode has been initiated. We don't really mind that. Although we are drawing a lot of lands now all of a sudden. Alright, Snapcaster Mage. That is definitely not a bad one. I think we still want to keep attacking with our Celestial Colonnade. And we've got Electrolyze in the graveyard. We've got Remand. And it looks like our opponent may have actually drawn something here. So it's going to be a copy of Dismember. Yep, there's not too much we can do about that, so that is actually going to resolve here. We don't have a full-blown hard counter that we can use there. So now the question is, do we just go ahead and flash in the Snapcaster Mage? I think we want to. I think we just want to get the beatdowns going. So let's flash in Snapcaster Mage. We're staying at 4, which is important. We don't want to go below 4 because we've already seen Siege Rhino from our opponent. But we're going to Snapcaster Mage back, Electrolyze, and just deal our opponent 2 damage. And alright, so we drew a lightning bolt. So if our opponent bricks off for a couple turns, we'll be in good shape because we have this bolt to deal the final 3. And it looks like our opponent doesn't have anything for the moment. And passing is always a good sign. We drew a removal spell. Lingering Souls in particular out of this Abzan deck is very good against our deck. So that's one card we definitely don't want our opponent to draw. Alright, well, it looks like we're back to the drawing board again. As our opponent found another removal spell for Snapcaster Mage. Now we've actually got 6 points of burn, so we can put our opponent down to 1. Okay, there's a copy of Kitchen Finks. That's pretty annoying, although we do have Path to Exile in hand, which we probably want to use on the Finks, but we'll take 1 draw step. So yeah, we're probably going to want to go ahead and Path to Exile away the Kitchen Finks. Gavany Township doesn't really change that. So yeah. And if we draw another Bolt or Helix, we can just win the game. There it is. Okay. So let's just go for it. And so we actually were able to take that one down. Woo. Alright. Definitely a close one. Those early Wiltleaf Leeches and even that Lingering Souls late in the game were definitely an issue for us. We were able to take them off all of our opponent's creatures off the board in the end, but a little bit too close for comfort. So let's look at our sideboard options here. I think Magma Spray and Anger the Gods are the cards we really want. We saw both Kitchen Finks and Voice of Resurgence. So just having more ways to exile cards is nice. In terms of cards we want to be sideboarding out, Spell Snare is a candidate, since we really only saw Voice of Resurgence for 2 drops. Could also see maybe shaving one of the mana leaks. But this seems pretty reasonable here. I don't think we need to do anything too drastic. We could board in Engineered Explosives because of a card like Lingering Souls. So yeah, maybe we want the explosives for that reason. And yeah, I think I like that. We can shave maybe and anticipate. We actually didn't draw Nahiri at all that game. Would have been a good draw if we had. We'll just shave a remand. Yep, that seems fine. So shaving some counter spells on the draw is normally pretty safe. But but we do have a one land hand here that we are going to want to mulligan. Our opponent is also taking a mulligan. And yeah, we're going to keep this one. And I think we want to go ahead and top the Nahiri. Wow, okay. So our opponent's actually starting with Leyline of Sanctity. That's a little bit unusual. Even though, yes, we burned our opponent out in the last game, it still doesn't seem very good in this matchup. It means that we can't target our opponent with these lightning bolts and lightning helixes, but we can just target our opponent's creatures, and I think that's what we want to do, is we're just going to get a mountain and just bolt this birds. And just slowing our opponent down long enough to get this Nahiri on the table is just plan A at the moment. Voice of Resurgence would be very good here. If our opponent has one. We'll see if they do. Yep, okay. There is the Voice of Resurgence. And we awkwardly just drew our only copy of Spell Snare still in our deck. So yeah, I think we just go ahead and get rid of the Voice of Resurgence and let our opponent have an elemental token. Next turn we can Snapcaster Mage, Lightning Bolt. So yeah, I mean, we don't like getting 2-for-1 essentially, which is what this is, but not sure we can avoid it. And there's a Kitchen Finks. That's a pretty good one. Although Nahiri being able to exile Kitchen Finks is definitely relevant. And we'll see if our opponent has another creature here to make this elemental even bigger or not. It looks like they may not. So our opponent likely would have played a creature pre-combat if they had one. Alright, let's go ahead and fetch here. We are still going to want to play the Snapcaster Mage. So let's do that. And we can just go ahead and bolt away this elemental token and plan on Nahiriing away the Kitchen Finks. So I don't think we actually block here, because we're planning on Nahiriing the Finks. Although our opponent could still have another creature here. We'll see. Alright. They do have another creature. It's a voice, but our plan is still the same. We're still going to Nahiri away this Kitchen Finks. And we have Snapcaster Mage to be able to block the Voice of Resurgence. Now, if our opponent has a removal spell for the Snapcaster Mage, that does mean our Nahiri is going to die, but we have a backup one, so it's all good. Alright, yep. One Nahiri is officially down, or about to be down, I should say. But that's okay. Got more where that one came from. And getting to find a land off of Path to Exile is always nice. Nahiri notably can also exile that Leyline of Sanctity if we really want to. And that's another reason why this Leyline just seems pretty out of place here. Alright, there is a Siege Rhino. That's not a bad one to have here. Puts us all the way down to 8. And it puts a lot of pressure on us. So we're going to +2 Nahiri. Just pitching a land. And that's a pretty good draw. So what we can actually do here is completely get rid of the Siege Rhino. If we want to. And we probably do want to. We can Snapcaster Mage, the Lightning Helix, and then finish it off with the Lightning Bolt in our hand. So we're just kind of trying to protect Nahiri. We know that if it gets to 8 loyalty, we're basically a lock to win from that stage. And so our opponent's going to have to peel spells here if they want to win this game. I think we can afford to, at this point, pitch this Spell Snare. And, yep, just going to go ahead and get in with Snapcaster Mage. And holding up Hallowed Moonlight and Engineered Explosives. Now, Hallowed Moonlight is actually good against Lingering Souls. So that's one interaction and why we kept it in our deck. It's also good against Voice of Resurgence. It's okay against Voice of Resurgence. And it looks like our opponent's still passing, or essentially bricking off here. And so there's really no need for us to actually do anything. We're just going to plus. We don't even have to discard any of this stuff. We can just plus Nahiri and then next turn go get Emrakul. And I don't think there's any way our opponent's going to get out of this. But we'll go ahead and show them the Emrakul. And yep, that's going to be the match.